The largest crypto theft in history was $1.5 billion, and not one line of smart contract code was broken. No cryptography was cracked. Every person who had to approve that transaction approved it. They just weren't looking at the transaction they thought they were. Someone had changed what appeared on their screen. And that's not a freak one-off. I pulled this year's numbers from two security firms who don't share methods, and they land in the same place. Code bugs are the most common thing that goes wrong in this industry. They're also the cheapest. The real money walks out through keys and screens and people. So today, the whole story. Where computer security came from, how blockchain flipped its oldest assumptions, and who's actually building the defense. To understand why blockchain security is strange, you have to go back before blockchain existed, to a fight over whether ordinary people were allowed strong encryption at all. In the early 90s, cryptography was legally classified as a munition, a weapon. When a programmer named Phil Zimmerman put an encryption tool on the internet so activists could use it, the government opened a criminal investigation that ran 3 years. And that's the whole video in miniature. The old model had a spare key. Somebody could always get back in. Then Bitcoin deletes it. Now here's something I did rather than take on faith. I downloaded the actual Bitcoin white paper and searched it. The phrase 51% attack is not in there. Not once. Neither is immutable. Neither is irreversible. What Satoshi wrote is that the system holds as long as honest nodes control more computing power than any attacker. And he models it as a gambling problem, a probability, not a magic threshold. But the line that matters is on page 1. Transactions that are computationally impractical to reverse would protect sellers from fraud, and escrow could protect buyers. He removed the undo button deliberately and flagged the cost in the same breath. And then, 2 years in, it broke. August 15th, 2010. One block contains a transaction creating 184 billion Bitcoin out of nothing, because the code checking transactions couldn't handle numbers that big. A fix was out in about 5 hours, and the good chain overtook the bad one 53 blocks later. The fake coins simply stopped existing. Immutable had an undo button, and Bitcoin used it, 6 years before Ethereum made the same choice. So Bitcoin gave us money you can't reverse. Ethereum gave us programs that move that money. And that created something new, because a mistake in your code isn't a crash anymore. It's a withdrawal. June 2016. The DAO. A giant experiment in group investing holding about 1/6 of all the Ether in existence. Somebody drains roughly 3.6 million Ether, about 1/3 of the fund, and the mechanism is beautiful in the worst way. The code sent the money out first and updated your balance afterwards, so the attacker just asked again before the books closed. And again. Now here's where the popular version is wrong, and I checked rather than repeat it. Everyone says researchers warned about this and got ignored, so I pulled the famous warning paper, published 3 weeks before, and searched it. The word reentrancy does not appear. Not once. They were warning about the voting system, not the code. The code flaw was flagged separately a week before, so nobody was ignored. The economists audited the incentives, the engineers audited the code, and nobody was in both rooms. That failure still happens every week. And then there's parity. July 2017. A wallet used by a lot of serious projects has a setup function sitting completely unguarded. An attacker walks in, makes himself the owner, and leaves with 153,000 Ether. And Parity's own postmortem is remarkably honest about why. The change that introduced the bug was buried inside a 4,000-line update that was mostly interface work. So it got tagged a user interface change, and because of that, it got one review. A $30 million loss caused by a mislabeled pull request. And 4 months later, a second parity bug froze 500,000 Ether permanently. Not stolen, nobody got a cent, just unreachable forever. "Nobody can steal it, and you can't lose it," turn out to be different promises. Okay, that's the origin story. Now what's happening right now? Because the picture has quietly flipped and most people haven't noticed. First half of 2026, CertiK counted 204 incidents caused by smart contract bugs, easily the most common way things go wrong. Total damage? About $152 million. Now hold that next to this. 33 incidents where somebody's keys got compromised. 33. $445 million. So the average key compromise costs about 18 times what the average code bug costs. Smart contract bugs are the thing that happens most, and they're among the cheapest. And this isn't one firm with an odd methodology. TRM Labs, different data, same conclusion. Key and infrastructure compromise was about 15% of incidents and 76% of the money. And the cleanest example happened 12 days ago at a trading protocol called Ostium. The attacker got hold of a key belonging to the price feed, the thing that tells the protocol what Bitcoin is worth. And then they just submitted prices. Correctly signed, perfectly valid prices, opening positions at a Bitcoin price of about $5,000 and closing them at the real one, roughly 20 times over. And this is the part that matters. The contract wasn't buggy, and the signature was genuine. There was nothing for an auditor to find, because the failure was in the plumbing around the code, the part nobody gets paid to look at. Then there's who's doing it. North Korea accounted for about 66% of everything stolen this half, with fewer attacks than before, not more. And the most underreported part isn't the hacking, it's the hiring. Their operatives apply for jobs, pass the interviews, get onboarded, get handed credentials, and they're simply inside. No exploit, no 0 day. A job application. So who's on the other side of this? Because it's easy to make these all threat and no defense, and that's not the honest picture. I want to tell you about Guido, and I want to start where he started, because it isn't where you'd expect. 11th grade, he gets Crohn's disease and mono, and misses the entire school year. He spends that year at home teaching himself to break into things. Then he goes back and hacks his school district, and ends up holding the administrative password for the whole thing. 2007, he's at the NSA, first on the offensive side, the team that breaks into things, then on the defensive side. So he learned to break in before he learned to defend. And in 2012, he co-founds a security firm called Trail of Bits. And here's the revealing bit. They refused to touch crypto for years. A colleague spent a year pushing him to look at blockchain and he wouldn't. Then the DAO got drained, and in his words, a light bulb went off across the security community. There are actual security issues in this code, and they result in direct financial loss. So the security world didn't show up because it believed in blockchain. It showed up when the losses started being counted in dollars. And the sentence that explains everything his company built is this one. I don't ever want to find the same bug twice. That's why they wrote tools to hunt the bugs they got bored of finding by hand and gave them away free. Then 2025, DARPA runs a 2-year competition to see whether AI can find and fix vulnerabilities in real software with no human involved. Trail of Bits comes second, wins $3 million, and open sources the whole system. Across the competition, the machines analyzed 54 million lines of code and found 18 genuine, previously unknown vulnerabilities in software the world runs on. Now the honest half. Those systems still missed about 14% of the bugs they were given, and a good chunk of what they found they couldn't fix. And Guido says plainly that tricking an AI into doing the wrong thing is still unsolved. So let's finish the story I opened with. February 2025. Bybit, $1.5 billion. It starts 17 days earlier on a single developer's laptop at a company that makes wallet software, not Bybit, a supplier. From there, the attackers reach that company's cloud storage, and 2 days before the theft, they slip code into the page Bybit signers use. So the signers open the page, see a normal transaction, check it, approve it. Every signature is real. The multi-sig worked exactly as designed and the money left anyway, because what they were shown was not what they were signing. And that's why just get another audit isn't the answer. When Balancer lost around $128 million last November, the firm that had formally verified that code published an analysis of its own miss. Their conclusion was that solvency proofs are not sufficient. The prover answered its question perfectly. It was the wrong question. So what actually works is less glamorous than it should be. Watch every transaction before it's signed and make the signing process something you can enforce and inspect. And here's the gap. Out of more than 1,400 tracked projects, about 9% have independent monitoring. That's not a technology problem. It's an adoption problem. Now the good news, because it's real and sourced. Immunify maps 6 years of DeFi losses. Flash loan attacks were over half of all losses in 2020 and are now under 1%. Bridge exploits were nearly 3/4 of losses in 2022, now around 3%. They didn't fade away on their own, they were engineered out. And 2 days ago, the best ending this story could have. A payments company in Singapore called AAA had its own wallets drained, about $11.8 million across 7 blockchains. But not one customer lost a cent, because Singapore's regulator requires client money to be held separately, in trust. The ring fence held. But I'm not handing you a victory lap. Recovery of stolen funds actually got worse this year, and both CertiK and TRM say the same thing. This year's lower total isn't better defense, it's the absence of another Bybit. So the fair summary is that the code is getting safer faster than the people are. So let's pull it together, because there's a genuinely satisfying shape to all of this. Old school security rested on 3 quiet assumptions. There's a boundary you control, secrets can be changed if they leak, and if something goes wrong, somebody can undo it. Blockchains removed all 3 on purpose. The code is public, the asset is yours the moment you hold the key, and there's no manager to call. So the field reinvented itself. Instead of watching for intruders and cleaning up afterwards, it had to prove things were correct before they went live. And that worked. The old attack types are squeezed down to almost nothing. But here's the twist. It worked so well that attackers stopped attacking the code. They went to the laptop, the cloud account, the person clicking approve on a Tuesday afternoon. The perimeter came back. It's just that the perimeter is now a private key, and the last line of defense is a human being reading a screen. So this isn't a field losing. It's a field that solved its first problem well enough to earn a harder one. There are people who've spent whole careers making sure nobody has to find the same bug twice, and they gave the tools away free. That's worth being optimistic about. So if you take one thing and actually do it, go to revoke.cash and clear out old token approvals you've forgotten about. Free, no sign up, 5 minutes, and it's aimed straight at how ordinary people actually lose money. Then, 2 to watch. Ask whether your wallet supports clear signing, so you read what you're approving in plain language instead of hex. And mark the 11th of September, when Europe's new reporting rules start to bite for anyone selling wallet software into the EU. Full research and every source is linked below. Thanks for watching.